Betrayal's sting is amplified when it originates from someone you've entrusted your heart to. For me, it wasn't just a sting. It was a consuming fire, incinerating everything I believed I knew, leaving only a burning resolve for retribution. Clara and I met 12 years ago, when ambition fueled my sleepless nights. I was a young architect, hungry for my first significant project. She was a vibrant, energetic fitness trainer, her radiant smile illuminating every room. We seemed perfectly compatible, or so I thought. A decade later, my world revolved around two things: building a legacy in my profession and creating a loving, stable home for Liam, our 8-year-old son. Clara appeared happy, or at least I believed she was. Yet cracks began to appear in her facade about a year ago. She started staying out late, consistently offering the same excuse: a new client who only trains in the evenings. Initially, I dismissed it. Her career demanded flexibility, and I had no reason to doubt her. But subtle changes followed. Her phone became inseparable, locked behind an unknown code. Petty arguments erupted, creating unnecessary distance. The breaking point arrived during Liam's soccer match. Clara was present physically but emotionally absent, glued to her phone. When I inquired about her texting, she curtly replied, "Just work." I knew better. The realization dawned gradually, like assembling a puzzle you're unsure you want to complete. Her gym bag, once containing minimal essentials, now overflowed with unfamiliar clothing. She started wearing perfume, a stark contrast to her sweat-intensive job. Then there were the smiles. Not for me, but intimate, sly smiles directed at her phone, reminiscent of our early days together. I could have confronted her, demanded the truth, but something held me back. Perhaps pride, a need for irrefutable proof before shattering our lives, or maybe a subconscious desire for her to pay. I chose to investigate. Suspicion corrodes like acid, but I wouldn't let it consume me. I needed answers, concrete evidence beyond mere paranoia. Fortunately, my profession had instilled patience and precision, skills valuable in uncovering Clara's betrayal. The opportunity arose one evening when she left her car keys on the counter. I'd recently installed a GPS tracker, a precaution I justified as a safety measure. After activating the device via an app, I waited 2 weeks. Her car's movements painted a damning picture. She'd leave for work, go to the gym, and stay for her supposed late-night sessions. Instead of returning home, the tracker showed her car repeatedly parked at the same location, the Azure Grand Hotel. Initially, I rationalized it, perhaps a client who worked late and preferred the hotel gym. But the time gaps between her arrival and departure told a different story. One night, she was careless. Clara's smartwatch, synced to her phone, remained charging in the kitchen while she slept. A notification pinged. I couldn't resist. The message was from someone named Brandon. "Brandon, you looked amazing tonight. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. Same time, same room." My pulse spiked. The attached image, a shirtless selfie of Brandon, grinning, sealed it. This wasn't a client. The name was familiar. Brandon was a real estate mogul, known for his extravagant lifestyle and smooth charm. I'd seen him a few times when picking Clara up from the gym. He was the type who believed the world owed him attention. Now, it seemed, he believed he was owed my wife. Impulsiveness wasn't my style. Confronting Clara would have been momentarily satisfying, but wouldn't provide the closure I craved. I wanted the full story, and I wanted her to bear the weight of her actions. I contacted a friend specializing in digital forensics, who extracted data from Clara's smartwatch and phone backups. The texts were just the beginning. Photos, dates, and explicit messages painted a vivid picture of their escapades. Most damning was a recurring series of bookings at the Azure Grand, always under Brandon's name. Still, I wasn't satisfied. To dismantle her world, I needed more: surveillance footage from the hotel. A discreet request to a mutual acquaintance working in hotel security provided grainy but undeniable video clips of Clara and Brandon entering a room late at night and leaving hours later. Watching the first clip, something shifted within me. Anger, humiliation, and heartbreak coalesced into a cold, steely resolve. This wasn't just about her betrayal. It was about the life we'd built, the years of sacrifices trampled as meaningless. Two people had betrayed me, not one. Brandon had knowingly infiltrated my world, laughing in the shadows while playing house with my wife. They both needed to learn the consequences of betraying someone with everything to lose, and the means to make them regret it. Betrayal is a two-move game, the one that wounds, and the one where you determine the depth of the counter-wound. I'd endured the first move, and was ready for the second. This wouldn't be an impulsive outburst. Clara and Brandon had plotted meticulously. They deserved a similarly methodical response. I spent nights crafting their downfall. My plan was so thorough, no aspect of their lives would remain untouched. Clara would lose everything she valued, and Brandon would regret ever crossing my path. First, financial security. Mine, not hers. I funneled our joint assets into a trust under Liam's name. Clara had never been interested in the minutiae of our finances. I'd always managed them. By the time she noticed, our shared accounts would be drained, leaving her only the meager savings in her personal account. While securing my assets, I pulled strings. A quiet inquiry revealed that Brandon's wife, Amanda, was an influencer whose career depended on her philanthropic image. I wondered if Amanda knew her husband's extracurricular activities would make headlines. To set the stage for my revenge, I hired a private investigator. Finding dirt on Brandon wasn't difficult. He was sloppy. Photos, receipts, and damning messages created a monument to his arrogance. The most valuable find was Amanda herself. Unlike her husband, she was genuine, passionate about charity, and beloved by her followers, the type of person who would turn Brandon's infidelity into a public crusade. The pièce de résistance was a dinner party. I invited Clara, Brandon, and Amanda under the guise of a networking opportunity. Clara was hesitant but agreed, seeing it as a chance to blend her two lives without suspicion. I prepared meticulously, a catered menu, fine wine, warm lighting, setting the stage for what Clara and Brandon believed would be a night of indulgence. They had no idea they were walking into an ambush. That evening, Clara, dressed in a dress I didn't recognize, likely bought by Brandon, was buzzing with excitement, though she masked it poorly. Brandon arrived, oozing his usual cocky charm, followed by Amanda with a serene smile. I played the perfect host, guiding them to the dining table. Over drinks, Brandon boasted about a recent property acquisition, and Clara laughed, a little too loudly. As dessert approached, I raised my glass. Before dessert, I said calmly, I thought it would be nice to share a video, a tribute to the connections in this room. The projector whirred to life, and the screen lit up with footage of Clara and Brandon entering the Azure Grand Hotel. Their faces were unmistakable, their bodies close as they walked hand in hand. Gasps filled the room. Amanda's sharp intake of breath cut through the silence. The next clips were worse. Screenshots of explicit texts, timestamps aligning perfectly with their hotel visits. By the time the video ended, the room was frigid. Clara's face was ashen. Brandon sat frozen, his smirk obliterated. Now that introductions are out of the way, I said, setting down my glass. How about dessert? Their stunned silence was the sweetest sound I'd heard in years. Clara stammered excuses, muttering about misunderstandings and boundaries. But Amanda was already on her feet, glaring at her husband. "You bastard!" she hissed. Brandon tried to speak, but Amanda wouldn't let him. She stormed out, leaving Brandon and Clara to flounder in their humiliation. I said nothing, simply clearing the plates, letting the weight of their choices settle over them. They'd played their game, now it was my turn. When aiming for revenge, precision is key. Clara and Brandon had walked into my trap, but the dinner was just the beginning. They would discover, step by step, that their betrayal had cost them everything. Brandon's smugness, his overconfidence, his Achilles heel. He thought his wealth and reputation made him untouchable, but he'd underestimated two things: how deeply Amanda despised betrayal, and how much damage a meticulous architect could inflict. The day after the dinner, Amanda filed for divorce, armed with the evidence I'd provided. In one swift move, Brandon's life unraveled. Amanda's PR team turned the divorce into a public spectacle. spinning a narrative of resilience and empowerment. News outlets picked up the story, splashing headlines across every major platform. Sponsors and clients dropped Brandon. By the week's end, his reputation was in tatters. Amanda's divorce settlement stripped him of half his assets. Brandon, who once boasted of his perfect life, was now in ruins. Clara fared no better. Our joint accounts were empty, save for a modest sum I'd left to delay suspicion. Her credit card stopped working. Calls to the bank revealed she no longer had access to our assets. She confronted me, her face pale with fear. "What's going on, Ethan?" she demanded. "Why are our accounts frozen?" I calmly sipped my coffee, letting her desperation wash over me. "They aren't our accounts anymore," I replied. "They're Liam's now. I've set up a trust for him. His future deserves to be secure, don't you think?" "You can't do this," she yelled. "I need access to my money, our money." I corrected, standing to face her. "And I think you've had enough of it. You've been spending plenty on your little client, haven't you?" Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I left her there, her world crumbling. While Clara scrambled to salvage her life, I wasn't done. I created a private website containing all the evidence of her affair. Hotel footage, screenshots of messages, photos of her and Brandon at the gym. I didn't broadcast it publicly, but ensured it landed in the inboxes of her most influential friends and colleagues. The fallout was swift. Gossip spread like wildfire. Clara became the subject of whispers at every social gathering. Clients canceled sessions. The gym owner, eager to avoid scandal, made it clear she was no longer welcome. By the time I revoked the lease on her studio space, citing urgent renovations, she had nowhere to turn. Amanda reached out a few weeks later, thanking me for exposing Brandon. We met for coffee, her idea. We shared stories of betrayal. Her resilience struck me. She'd taken her pain and used it to fuel her brand, garnering even more support. "You handled this with impressive calm," she said. "It wasn't calm," I replied. "It was precision. People like Brandon and Clara think they can get away with anything. They don't expect to be outplayed." Amanda laughed, a genuine sound contrasting with the chaos we both endured. We parted as allies, bound by a shared experience of betrayal. Of course, that connection drove Brandon and Clara insane. Brandon sold prized properties to cover legal fees and maintain a lavish lifestyle he could no longer afford. His name became synonymous with scandal, effectively blacklisting him from his industry. Clara was reduced to part-time gigs, couch surfing, trying to salvage her reputation. She contacted me once, asking to talk. I agreed, not for reconciliation, but to witness her defeat. "I made a mistake," she said, tears streaming. "I was selfish, but Ethan, we have a son. Can't we figure this out?" "You're right about one thing," I said. "We have a son, and he deserves better than to grow up watching his father tolerate betrayal." That was the last time we spoke. Just when I thought the dust had settled, a surprising opportunity arose. A colleague proposed a new housing development project. The twist? The site was Clara's former studio. I couldn't resist. I took on the project, rebranding the space as Phoenix Rise, a housing initiative for single parents and families recovering from hardship. The irony was delicious, and I ensured the name was prominently featured in local media. Clara saw the news. I didn't hear her reaction directly, but word reached me. She'd broken down in tears, realizing the space she'd once called her own had been transformed into something far greater. Brandon was seen less and less in social circles. The man who once commanded attention had become a pariah. His wealth and charm were insufficient to shield him from the consequences. I last heard he'd taken a job at a smaller firm, far removed from the high-profile deals he used to boast about. It was a humbling, humiliating descent for a man who once acted like the world owed him everything. If anyone emerged stronger, it was Amanda. Her divorce turned her into a media darling, a symbol of resilience. She used the attention to grow her brand, launching a foundation for women recovering from infidelity and abuse. We remained close, though platonically. She often joked about the rumors. "Let them think whatever they want," she'd say. "They're already living rent-free in their misery. Might as well give them something to talk about." As for me, I poured my energy into Liam and my work. I focused on the future. But I wasn't naive. Betrayal leaves scars. They didn't define me but reminded me of hard-learned lessons. Trust is fragile, loyalty is earned, and revenge, when wielded with precision, can be the most cathartic closure of all. The final piece of my revenge wasn't planned. It happened naturally. A poetic end. One evening, Liam was working on a school project about family. He asked, "What does Phoenix Rise mean, Dad?" I smiled, the name taking on a deeper meaning than originally intended. "It means starting over, no matter how hard it is, rising from the ashes. And that's exactly what I've done."